Carly Nesson is a grateful human. She is the social impact project manager at Oracle NetSuite, and she loves her son Sam and partner Jake. Something that recently made her smile is watching her son chase a butterfly. Carly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're already beaming. So obviously, talking about gratitude, you mentioned you love your son Sam and partner Jake. Tell us a little bit about why you're so grateful for them.
Well, Sam is 2.5. Let's start there. I know when you hear about a 2-year-old, you may not think they're always fun. You hear about those terrible twos, but I think there's some simple joy that comes with watching a toddler discover things that you yourself don't stop to appreciate, like chasing a butterfly, and just how all of the weight of the day can just melt away with this simple joy. I think that's one of the things that just slows me down and helps me stay grounded.
Super cool. I love that. Painted
Mm-hmm.
a good thought there of just the simplicity of that. That's really fun.
It's true.
Um, so there's probably so many things, but what are you grateful for that's happened on your journey to get you to where you are today as a great team member of an awesome company like Oracle?
I think that my gratitude comes with the ability to say yes to things that present themselves
Yeah.
that you don't expect. And I'm very much a planner. I mean, I'm a project manager, I'm an event planner. So I love knowing what's coming next, what we need to do, who's doing what. And life really doesn't work that way. And my life certainly hasn't worked that way. I grew up thinking I would be an architect, and I went to architecture school and learned very quickly it wasn't for me. And in trying to find out why this happened, what's next, I just kind of kept myself open to other things. And I started volunteering. After I decided to leave the architecture path, I just took advantage of whatever opportunities presented themselves. And one of those was the American Red Cross.
Hmm.
I had just moved to a new city. I didn't know anyone. The only person that I knew was in school and otherwise occupied. So I kept myself busy by volunteering, and I started answering phones at the Red Cross. And it got me into a position where I had to answer all the questions that came in. And I got to learn about all of the different things the Red Cross did and all of the different opportunities that I could do with them. So I would get curious about something and say, that looks cool. What are you working on? Can I help? And I ended up helping communicate with donors about how they were impacting victims of home fires, or helping to fundraise through this great home tour that, who would have guessed I would be right here? But it led me to a point where I met the best people because I never shut myself off to opportunities. And I'm very grateful for even the ability to say yes and jump on those things when they come.
That's awesome. Is there someone in particular during your time at the Red Cross that you're like, I'm especially grateful for that had an impact along that way?
Yeah, it's the first person that came to mind when you asked me that was one of my bosses, who was, of course, the Red Cross is a national organization broken down into regions, and each region has a chief executive officer. So that person is responsible largely for the fundraising for that region, but also for the response. And it was a disaster response space that I was in. And I took a short-term interim job for the CEO to be her executive assistant. And I think watching her be a leader in that space, and she had a reputation of expecting a lot of people, of having high standards, of maybe, really kind of putting the fire under people sometimes. And it was really interesting to watch that in action and not see it as a scary thing, see it as here's somebody's passion coming into play. And I think I'd never seen it modeled in that way, and to see it applied there, it was inspirational for me to be able to see what I could then carry forward with what I was able to do as well.
That's awesome. You mentioned the personality traits of a project manager. Is that something that you were like from a very early age, just always have had some of those personality traits?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always been very linear thinking. I love math. I'm a math brain. I actually have a bachelor's degree in math, and it really helps me to feel like there's a right answer and a right direction and the next thing. And I think that showed up in a lot of ways when I was growing up. but I applied it to architecture and didn't necessarily think about it in other things. So it's fun to see the ways that it shows up now that I didn't really expect.
I don't know that I've talked to too many or maybe ever been in a conversation where someone's told me their degree just, is math on the diploma. Like that is an intimidating pursuit. What are you grateful for about math along the way?
I've reframed it a couple of ways when I'm in job interviews and such. There's a lot of ways you can apply math. Of course, you could be a math teacher or an analyst or some sort, but I really just tell people I got a degree in problem solving
Mm,
and
very
perseverance
good.
sometimes too. I it was those late nights and those tough proofs that you don't think you're going to get through. You kind of prove to yourself that you can do it, and then getting the degree on the other side of it. I know that's not the end all be all that we need to expect from people, but even if you have something that you apply yourself to and are able to see, look, I did that hard thing and now I can take it and do whatever I want with it.
Right on, right on. And how did you make the jump from Red Cross to eventually Oracle NetSuite?
Yeah. So I was with the Red Cross as a volunteer manager for most of my career. But right before the pandemic, in 2019, fall of 2019, I jumped into an event management role with the Red Cross and I started planning their fundraising events, their galas for Massachusetts. So we had these big events, and I was planning 4 simultaneously that were supposed to happen in March and April of 2020. And of course, we all know what happened. I mean, it affected everyone who is listening to this. It didn't happen, and my job was upended a little bit, and it ended up being eliminated just business wise. And it kind of was clear to me at that time it's time to make a change. And I actually, at that time as well, if you're doing the math with my 2.5-year-old, I was newly pregnant and trying to figure out what's next. And it just, again, was one of those times where opportunities arise, door opens. And I had a former colleague from the Red Cross who has a friend that works for NetSuite. And the friend sent her this job description and she said, this is perfect for you. And the friend said, no, it's not perfect for me, but it's perfect for this other person. And she sent it to me, and I interviewed, and I told the hiring manager, Peggy, Nick, I know you know Peggy. I told her, I'm perfect for this job. You got to hire me. Said, you're right. I love your confidence. And I'm grateful that, it did present itself and I was able to take advantage of that as an
Right
option.
on. And I'm sure you've thanked that friend that passed along that job description as well.
I've gotten to, I didn't know her before the job description, before she sent that along. It was a great meeting. And then I've taken her out to breakfast since to say a big thank you. And she's actually helped out with some of my projects and some of the events that I've worked on. So it's fun to see it come full circle.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What along that whole journey so far that you've talked about, what's like a really hard lesson that you've had to learn, but you're really grateful for, having to go through it?
Yeah. You heard me talk about being a planner, and the idea between the things that I plan don't come to fruition. It feels like a failure sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to talk yourself out of that, applying that situation to yourself as a whole and letting it define either your own success or your own view of yourself, and being able to say, that didn't work, but what did I learn from it? And I think that's the thing I was most grateful for along the way, is the support of the people who I could bounce those things off of, who could talk me down and say, that's okay, now what's next? And just kind of being able to regroup after that.
Right on. Speaking of things that you're grateful for, that we're grateful for along the way, we've had a recent activation with Oracle NetSuite that was pretty sweet. Can you share with those listening what that looked like?
Oh, my favorite thing to talk about. The Hackathon for Good just happened, and it was a global event that we hosted in the spring of this year, of 2023. And it was our effort to engage NetSuite employees in a creative problem-solving event that allowed them to give back to a nonprofit. So this is something we've done 3 times now internally. We do some external hackathons as well, but of course, Fleece and Thank You was our featured nonprofit this year, bringing us our challenge of how you use NetSuite, how you want to use it better, and letting us kind of stretch the limits of NetSuite for you, seeing what our hackers can come up with. So we ended up engaging nearly 500 employees across the globe during this event. It was a week-long hackathon, and they had 72 hours within that week to come up with a solution. And we got 60 solutions out of that. And I know, Nick, that was a lot to just
Hmm.
try to figure out what these people came up with, all of the amazing things that they accomplished in such a short time, and then try to pick a winner from that. 17 countries represented, and we ended up having a winning team from the Czech Republic who was so excited to win because not only did they have an incredible solution, they participated last year and they were very good, but did not win. And they were gunning for it this year. And you could tell the passion they had. It was really fun to see.
Yeah, such a cool activation. We are so grateful for every team that gave time, every supporting team member that helped put it all together. Like, what a production through and through. It was just like an amazing experience around the world of like
Mhm.
grateful humans. It was so cool to be a part of.
That's a great way to put that. It was a way for everyone to channel. I think we're all kind of, I don't know, if we're all feeling this way. I'm certainly feeling this way, and I've heard it from others. But this feeling of there's so much going wrong around me right now. I want to make something better. And
Hmm.
this is one way that they could apply their skills and learn about you and then be able to say, I helped that. And hopefully, if we scale nationally or wherever Please and Thank You goes from here, that we can be part of that journey. And I know I've heard so much gratitude from the people who participated in the hackathon to even have that opportunity.
So cool. You
Mhm.
mentioned one relationship already along the way. What are some other relationships that you're just like super grateful for to get you to today?
There's so many. I feel like every stage has its own champions, its own people. I think a big one that I would be remiss not to mention is my mom. She's an incredibly supportive person who has helped me through the turns. And of course, as life goes, you hope you have your mom there to rely on, and I certainly do, and I'm very grateful for that at all stages of life.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Sometimes the answer to this question ends up being the same as the previous answer, and sometimes it's different. But who's someone that sticks out in your head that you're really grateful for that maybe you haven't necessarily said thank you to recently? And you're like, you know what? I need to call them when I get off this and text them and send them a thank you.
That's a great question because there's a lot of people that come to mind, but I think there are some people that helped through kind of the formative years that you don't think about, and you
Mm,
look back and you're thinking about, oh man, I didn't realize how important that person was to me. And I had a college roommate when I grew up in South Dakota, and I went to school, an engineering school in South Dakota. My college roommate at the time, I found her on Craigslist. She's from China originally, and she was studying nanoscience. And so she just happens to be one of the smartest, coolest people I've ever met. And I got to live with her because of Craigslist. So, like, what luck is that? But as we randomly got matched and got to know each other, there's so much about her that I think I learned and appreciated the way that she looked at others, the way that she looked at
mm,
life. And she said something one time that has always stuck with me, and I think of it every so often. She says, I have a hard time connecting with people who haven't been through hard things,
mm.
haven't been able to overcome hard things. And I've seen that come up in other relationships. And I think it's time for me to call her and say, well, thanks for saying that because I think of it so much. And
Oh, wow. She said that to you.
yeah, she said it. It was after we had kind of one of those discussions that was like, I don't tell everyone this, and this is really a big deal for me. And she was
Yeah.
just so open to it. And that was kind of affirming for her to say, the fact that you've been through this much makes you who you are, makes you somebody
Hmm.
important in life.
That's awesome. And if
Yeah.
she were listening to this right now, what's your message to her?
Well, I'm going to send it to her. So she's going to listen to it no matter what.
Great.
Well, I think I'm grateful for the outlook that she has. And I think I want to remind her the power that it has on those around her because I want to emulate that myself. And I think she's an incredible model of that.
That's awesome. You mentioned mom, Jake, Sam. If you also had a message of gratitude for your family, what would that sound like in the moment?
I I have an interesting family in that my older brother has cerebral palsy, and he has quite a lot of independence in his life. And I don't talk to him as much anymore because he's, doing his own thing. But I think growing up with him as a part of my family and my family the way it was taught me the inherent value of compassion and patience. There's so much of, growing up with a sibling with special needs that requires so much extra intention. And that I think it really highlights the value of exactly why we treat each other the way we do,
Mm-hmm.
and why it's important to think about how we treat each other. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something I'm grateful to my brother for, and grateful to my family for how they modeled that as a whole.
That's awesome. Uh, I've had the pleasure to be on more than a couple meetings with Carly through the hackathon process. And for sure, Carly, like there is a calming patience about you, whether there's 2 people or 200 people or 2,000 people on a call, you get the same composed, calm, patient demeanor. And I know like my team and I, we just really appreciated that for sure.
I appreciate that too. I think I always tell my boss, because I was in disaster relief, nothing is going to phase us. If something goes wrong, we'll just deal with it. We're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. That is
Thank you
awesome.
for saying that. I appreciate that.
For sure. The when you look to the future, there's so much that could be uncertain, and sometimes that can be scary. But
Mhm.
how do you think you flex your gratitude muscle as you look to the future? Like, how does gratitude play a part in anything that's to come for you personally or professionally?
I think over the past few years, especially, I've learned the value of communicating your gratitude and the power
Mhm.
that that can have, and the timing of that all too. I think there's such thing as over communicating gratitude. It starts to feel ingenuine, but I think there's a really wonderful responsibility as both a person within a team and a leader of a team to be able to call things out for what you see as far as skills or passions or actions, and be able to encourage or redirect or help grow whatever that might be. You can express your gratitude and lift others up while growing yourself and watching them grow too, and there's something really cool about that.
Love that. Awesome. On the power of gratitude, we ask everyone who comes on this show, why is gratitude so powerful, and why do you think it is?
I think gratitude is like a light. It can change how a room feels, it can change how an interaction feels. And when there's the lack of gratitude, you can feel that. But there's something so much lighter about when you see, experience, and deliver gratitude. It makes such a difference. And I've seen that in obviously the everyday situations, whether you're thanking someone for holding the door for you or something small like that, to I've seen it in some life changing situations when I was working for the Red Cross. Uh, I was on some disaster scenes,
Mm,
like home fires. We would respond to home fires and we would help, as the house is being taken care of by the firefighters, the people are being taken care of by the Red Cross volunteers who are on site. And the fact that somebody can come up to you after they've just lost everything and say, thank you for being here. Thank you for helping me with this is so humbling. And so it just kind of like lights a fire in your soul.
mhm,
And you can say, I can go do any hard thing if they can do this thing as
mhm.
well. It's contagious, which I think is what I appreciate about it most.
That's special. What is that? How does someone find gratitude in disaster?
That's a really good question. It's tough because it takes almost like looking at things beyond yourself, which
Mhm,
is, first of all, not inherently a skill that I think most people have. But I think, especially when there's stress around you, to be able to climb over that stress and say outward gratitude is another level of beauty.
mm,
And one of the moments that struck me the most was I was living in Charleston, working for the Red Cross down there for most of my career. And the Mother Emanuel shooting happened right after I became the executive assistant for the CEO. And we we were called on to basically put water tents, tents for water delivery out in front of the church as people were coming by and paying their respects. And so I was manning the tent one day, and this woman comes by and said, "Thank you for being here." And a lot of people did, and we chatted with her, but she introduced herself later, and she was one of the daughters of the victims. And she
Mm,
was there to mourn her own family. And she took the time to come over and thank us for that. And I didn't have any words for that. I think that was something I think about as I as I try to pull myself out of stress sometimes too, and think about who's helping me through that and who really makes a difference.
mm.
It can be such a small thing.
Gratitude has got to be just one of the best emotions humanity has to display. Truly amazing.
That's a really great way to say that. You're right.
Wow. Um, this has been so cool to just jam with you about gratitude, and I'm like grateful for your time and for
Yeah,
being
thank
on this.
you.
What is like the last piece of advice you have as someone who's seen disaster firsthand? Like, what is the best piece of advice you have for someone on how to flex their gratitude muscle for whatever's happening now or to come?
I think the part that I stick with when I'm having a hard time and getting stressed is that I find joy and importance in being the light for others and being able to pull yourself out of your own stressors and see the bigger picture. Um, Helps not only others, but helps yourself. And I think if you can express that gratitude for yourself to others, that there's nothing more powerful for other people than seeing that modeled.
Mm. Multiple times in some of the things you've shared today, you've talked about that others oriented piece, and I think I believe that that's a huge part of gratitude. It's like it's almost always about someone else in some way, and that's crazy powerful.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, awesome. We have been chatting with a grateful human, Carly Nesson. She's the social impact project manager at Oracle NetSuite. She loves her son Sam, her partner Jake, and when Sam chases butterflies. And she is a grateful human, and we're grateful for her. So, Carly, thanks for being on today.
Thanks for everything, Nick. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for this podcast. I'm grateful.
Awesome. We'll talk to you guys next time.